Cabinet Procurement and Sourcing Committee. So welcome everybody. So attend to the agenda. First of all, are there any apologies for absence?
Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest by members?
No.
With no declarations, can we note the unrestricted minutes of the meeting on the procurement board on the 10th of June 25? Are there any comments on that? Just noted. Can we agree the unrestricted minutes of the Cabinet Procurement and Sourcing Committee on the 7th of July? As usual, I won't go through them, but if anyone's got any points, please raise them.
Will do.
Okay, thank you very much. We have an actions list. Now, where do we take the actions list? Sorry, now or?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a couple of big responses we had to that, which are actually only just arrived, and I'm proposing we consider them in more detail at the next meeting, actually, because a quick discussion before that, and it's going to be quite hard to sort of swallow them. It's helpful if things can arrive on the published agenda and members have the time to read them all, you know, and absorb them and make any necessary inquiries before we get to the committee. But thank you very much anyway, and we'll pick you up either outside the meeting or at our next meeting, if that's all right. Unless there anything urgent, there are maybe one or two urgent items that members want to pick up now. That's fine.
I just wanted, sorry, could I just check with the extension of the temporary accommodation dynamic purchasing system and Line St Peters, have we had a response on that or not had a response on that? I thought that was the one we hadn't had a response on.
I haven't had a response.
We haven't. They promised it for October.
Yeah, it's promised for October.
Thank you.
It's this thing. The one that were occurring me was the Line 3 and St Peter's House, where exactly where that response we say we had was gone. Neither of us could find it, but and we also had there's another one, a long response we've just had on the lift service and repairs contract, which we need to try and absorb. What I was thinking of. Okay then. So shall we move on then to item 8? Sorry, I'm pushing forward here, but please do shout or saying, yeah, happy to move on. Yeah. Item 8, supported living services and residential open framework contract award. I think Jenny Murphy, who I guess is online. Welcome, Jenny. Welcome again, Jenny.
Thanks very much, everyone. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm Jenny Murphy. I'm the Assistant Director for Commissioning in Adults. So assuming members have read the report, this came to Cpic originally back in March, where we requested permission to go out for the market for this framework. We followed the process that was set out in that original report, and I'm now pleased to say we're bringing it back to contract award today. So this is a big achievement for us. It's been a lot of work, and it will really improve the way in which we manage the care and support market in Hackney. We had a good response rate. We had 301 providers apply to be on the framework, and we are recommending award to 107 of those providers. Now, you'll say there's a difference between the number that applied and the number that we're suggesting goes forward, and that's because we did some quite rigorous quality checks that we wanted providers to have demonstrated before they're able to join the framework. So some of the reasons that providers didn't make it on this time, they will be able to reapply when it's reopened. So included things like policies and procedures either not being included or being out of date. There were some mistakes made by providers in that if they've applied for lot 3, which requires accommodation, then they weren't able to demonstrate they have accommodation. And some things just like missing areas of application. So we've given feedback to the market and hope that when we reopen, we'll be able to get more providers make it through to the next round. I'd like to refer you to the sustainability section in section 9 of the report. So this is really the first time we've been able to gather this information in this way for the areas of green, better society and procuring fair. You'll note that for each, so in green, for instance, we have over 95% of providers have policies in place to safely recycle and reuse specific equipment where possible. We note that in terms of better society, 95% of the staff who work on sites are residing locally in those areas. And in terms of fair, 95% of those use ethical supplier, fair trade and equivalent through their organisations, and each provided evidence to do that. We didn't just ask sort of yes, no questions on that. So the plan is, if awarded today, we will get all of the providers set up on the system, and then we'll be using our e-brokerage system. So each time a new placement is required, there'll be an element of mini competition. So providers, again, will have to demonstrate quality and price as part of that. And then we'll be able to have conversations via the social workers with families to say these are the sort of top 2 or 3 that we're recommending, and then there'll be an element of choice for the person at the end of that as well. And we're also recommending that the other local authorities across North East London are able to join the framework from year 2 onwards. So we'd like to give ourselves 12 months in Hackney to make sure we're up and running smoothly. And we think in doing that, you know, again, that will further increase our purchasing power and enable us to be following the same quality standards across the region. So the plan, if awarded today, we will then reopen again within 12 months, and we hope at that point again we may attract another 100 providers or so, and we'll do some work with the market in between now and then on those quality issues that people didn't pass on first time around.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Councillor Young?
So hello, it's really interesting to read this, and I'm no expert in the area at all, so forgive me. And if we're wrong in our prediction that others will choose to join, what difference will that make?
It shouldn't, because we'll still have there's enough providers now to have the element of competition. It just means there will be increased choice effectively if we get more providers join. And I mean, not just providers, I meant other North East London councils. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so with that, it's for consistency in the market. So we're often purchasing from the same providers, often at different prices, monitoring them all in a slightly different way. So what that would enable us to better align across the region, to have a set of quality standards for those providers, and a fair price, so we're all transparent about what we're paying for those providers as well, so that we're not charged more in some boroughs than others.
Can I ask another question?
Yes, of course. So,
just on the understanding the difference between sort of spot purchasing and purchasing from the framework. So my understanding is, you know, spot purchasing, obviously you're just starting from scratch each time, and purchasing from the framework, they've already jumped through a certain set of hoops. So what are you assessing if you're using the framework, and what's the difference between that and the spot purchase?
So to go via the framework, the key in that is also the e-brokerage. So they're not just a list of named providers. If a new placement is required, we will go out to the providers that are on the framework and put a kind of brief summary of the care needs of that individual. Then we invite the provider to tell us how they'll meet those needs, what location they'll meet them from, how much that will cost us to do that. And then the e-brokerage system will kind of order the providers that are scoring highest at the top. And then it will be those ones that we take forward to have the conversation with families about which provider they would prefer to use.
Okay.
So actually those that are charging less and have highest quality will ultimately receive the most business by being part of this framework.
And so once you're on the framework and we're then, you know, purchasing, looking at that individual's needs, are we no longer then assessing things like the paragraph 9, sustainability issues, net zero, social value benefits? Have we already assessed those to get them on the framework, and we don't look at them again on that occasion, or do we also look at those issues?
Yeah, we will. So each time we reopen the framework, we will ask providers once a year to resubmit that information. We will have conversations with them obviously along the way, and we intend to look at those that are getting the largest amount of business as well, to potentially do some specific work in that area as well. But yeah, once it's not you're joined, and we don't look at that. At a minimum of once a year, we will do all of those quality checks again with each provider.
Thank you.
And yeah, and sorry, Councillor Williams. You're right, yeah, Councillor Young.
Yeah, I think so. I suppose I'm still thinking about that sustainable procurement.
Yeah,
Meeting our deliverables under the sustainable procurement strategy and how we're measuring, the extent to which they're meeting that in terms of each contract, not just what they look like on paper in general terms.
yeah. I was going to ask a question on similar terms to that. I mean, can you say anything to a little bit more on how you'll do that assessment, on how you'll be able to report on what we've achieved in terms of our sustainable procurement objectives?
Yeah, so I can see my colleague Jade has put her hand up. She led on these evaluations. So Jade, did you want to come in at that point?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we kind of do check on the outset of the PSQ, so the first kind of initial stage to get onto the framework, how providers are kind of what green, fair delivery and better society outcomes they are kind of measuring. Jenny did mention, looking at our kind of higher spend providers and kind of doing work with those to make sure that we are gaining considerable social value or sustainability outcomes from those providers as well. And I also wanted to draw your attention to so we don't just have the element of the spot purchasing via lot 1s and lot 2s, but we do also have lot 3, which is our block contracts as well. So they will be kind of bespoke further competition packages of kinds of sites that we might kind of commission within Hackney or within the borough or externally. So we will have kind of bespoke sustainability and social value elements that we will ask for from those specific providers as well. So we are kind of looking at it on a wider scale as well.
And so how are we actually capturing the delivery of the social value under each contract?
So for lot 3, each of those contracts will be individual. So we'll be monitoring those as we do with an ordinary contract, so to speak. So we'll have our kind of, our sustainability and social value tracker and have specific outcomes that providers have kind of demonstrated via their method statement responses. And that's what we'll kind of look to ensure that they're delivering that throughout the contract life. With regards to the lot 1 and lot 2 call off contracts, we'll have our QA team who monitor these contracts as well, but we're also going to look at kind of putting these onto the council's contract management system, so there will be kind of that element of reporting, and we've got our own bespoke annual reporting forms that will ask providers to complete, so that we can actually see how much they've delivered of each element within the year or the quarter or such. So that's how we'll kind of be continually monitoring.
So when the procurement team are asked, how many apprentices have we employed, how many local businesses are in there, all those, that whole range of questions, our green objectives, we'll be able to answer those questions.
Yeah, so we'll ask each provider, how many volunteers have you had within quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and then they can report that back to us.
Okay, sorry, Williams.
Can I ask a question on additional data? So just on the additional data, what is it you're collecting there in terms of information? I'm looking specifically at reporting on gender pay gap. Are you purely looking at whether gender pay gap reporting is done, or are you looking for direction of that pay gap, whether it's positive or negative, and progress over time?
So with the gender pay gap, it was quite interesting because we had quite a lot of providers who weren't in scope, but a lot of providers do actually do their own reporting. So that will be a continual kind of thing as well. So where we'll say, okay, if we've got organisations that don't currently report on their gender pay gap, can they demonstrate what they do? you know, maybe in a year or 2 years, if they're a very, very small organisation, is that something that they can work towards? And it's always about developing the providers. So it's always looking at the direction of you know, where the gender pay gap is going. And similarly with, you know, the sustainability, social value outcomes, you know, we would expect those to kind of get better. So that's our kind of expectation, and we'll make that very clear to providers as well.
So if I could just come back, so what I'm looking for is whether there's a legal requirement depending on the number of employees you have as an organisation, right? So what you're saying is some of them are not legally required to collect gender pay gap reporting data. However, they do so voluntarily, which is positive. But what would be even more positive is if they're taking action on their gender pay gap to close their gender pay gap. And so that's what I would be looking for, that there are positive steps being taken to close the gender pay gap, and to have progression routes, particularly for those women employees in the bottom 2 quartiles of the organisation. So we see them progressing to more senior positions. That's the way that you would change your gender pay gap across your entire organisation. So I'm just trying to figure out what is it you're looking for in terms of asking them for gender pay gap data. Is it purely that they're only reporting or voluntarily reporting their gender pay gap, or that they're making progress on closing their gender pay gap?
So in the first instance, it is whether they do report on it and what that looks like, but through the monitoring, it will be the progression of closing the gender pay gap. Does that answer the question? Sorry.
And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it simply answers the question, but I guess, yeah, it's the devil is in the detail, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess we wouldn't know kind of until we do get their kind of initial submission on, you know, within that first instance. So it's only what we can do once they're awarded, you know, that's within our control and within our kind of monitoring restraints, I guess.
Something that's worth saying probably is that one of the things that the framework is going to change, it's going to significantly increase the amount of like the aggregated data that the service area will be able to report on. So over the next sort of year to 2 years, we'll have a lot more information. So we'll be in a much stronger position to start thinking about setting targets and things like that, because the key is that they'll have the data that they didn't have previously when they were all separate purchases. They'll be able to look at and then able to start thinking about targets and things like that.
Okay.
And I think across the sector, there is a significant gender pay gap that disadvantages women. And so how do we use the levers available to us as a local council to make changes within the sector, as far as we're able to do so, particularly if it's going to be open to councils across North East London? There's a potential for massive impact for women. You know, that's within our control.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. I think it probably sort of got there, but my questions are very much, yeah, all those issues are really important to us, obviously. I was looking at particularly about local businesses, social enterprises and voluntary sector organisations in it. And without addressing directly the confidential appendix, it does say, you know, a lot of them seem to be companies. Do we know whether we're going to have more exposure to the organisations that the sustainable procurement strategy suggests we should be looking at, or less than we would have done on spot purchasing? There is, sorry, I haven't actually got an agenda in front of me. I've only got oh God, sorry, disappeared completely now. But there's some, I think it says also the figure of 14% local people in it, which didn't seem to be particularly high. Anyway, so just if you comment on that, are we doing better or worse in terms of our objective in using local and social enterprises? Yeah, the locally based employees, I think it was, isn't it? In Hackney, it was only 14% or so, 15 out of no, the businesses it is 15 out of 107. If you want to comment on, would like to comment on that?
Yeah, so we definitely have done a push to kind of get our existing providers onto the framework, and we know a lot of those are local providers. We are kind of with, I guess this is kind of the beauty of the framework as well, is that it doesn't actually kind of restrict anyone else from joining. So if there are new entrants to the markets, then, you know, it is open for you know, new kinds of businesses within Hackney who are kind of developing, etc., to join the framework. And we are kind of doing work with our colleagues in the business team as well, to get these opportunities out to local providers, etc. So just kind of trying to make sure that we can kind of tackle this from every angle that we can, really. So yeah, I think it's important to note that we did get a very, very high number of expression of interests. So we've got kind of over 600 suppliers interested in this. I don't have the data from ProContract to pull off how many of those are local in Hackney at the moment, but I'm assuming we've had a high amount of kind of interest, and it's not going to decrease anytime soon, really. We are kind of seeing always like new entrants into the market and stuff like that. So Denny, I don't know if you want to expand on any of that.
I'll just add as well, in terms of the element of choice, we know across North East London that we do place in each other's homes, but that is often down to individual choice as well, because people choose to move closer to family at that point. So again, joining up across North East London would be really beneficial, we feel, to be able to have better consistency in that area. We don't have a huge amount of care homes in Hackney, so for the residential lot, we know that we go outside, but as I said, that is often down to choice as well. But what it means is that we can have a better relationship with those suppliers and manage better the way in which we work with them, because there will always be a minimum standard in which we expect them to work, as opposed to spot purchasing where it's kind of first come, first serve, really.
Okay, that's very helpful, but so can I just come back and say, so go back to another my question was, if I'm asked, does this arrangement result in more local voluntary sector organisations and small businesses being involved in this work than before? What's the answer?
It's probably about the same, to be honest. I think it's not going to create new businesses, because the suppliers for these types of markets are already there, but it will enable us to have a better working relationship with those suppliers, and we will encourage the Hackney providers to apply, and we had those conversations with the ones that are. Locality is also part of that e-brokerage system that I mentioned before, so where the supplier is based will form part of the mini evaluation as well. So where people want to stay in Hackney, those providers will automatically sort of jump to the top of the list in terms of the scoring evaluation.
Councillor?
It was just a follow-up to make sure I understand. So in terms of that providers being locally based, are we saying that because obviously we have very few care homes in Hackney, we wouldn't expect a high proportion of providers to be locally based because they're not delivering a service in Hackney? Is that right? Or are we still aiming for, as many as possible to be locally based?
Yes, I think.
And if so, what's the target?
The former, I would say. Yeah, we have a small care home market. We aren't anticipating opening more homes in borough. Yeah, that's the answer.
And so, do we have a sort of a target, either formal or informal, in terms of what percentage we'd like to be locally based of the providers?
I don't know that we included it this time around. That might be something, Jade, we want to think about going forward, how we can factor that in, certainly.
I mean, only if it's feasible, I suppose. What I'm thinking is, if they're providing a service in Redbridge, we don't want to insist that they're starting off in Hackney.
Okay, well, I've taken earlier answers that we are measuring all of this going forward in, you know, in a way, so we can look at, see how successful we are in that. I suppose the devil is in how, you know, how successful we are and work with the business teams and, you know, in encouraging new organisations and existing organisations to bid for it. So it'd be interesting at some point to know what that work is and how successful it's been. I don't know how we do that. I'm not looking at some head of the procurement section here to see if you can help with how we might do that without creating a big administrative burden.
Yeah, I think as colleagues have said, so this is an open framework. So there is an opportunity for suppliers to reapply again in the next round of this framework. I suppose what will be helpful is the work with the economic development team, just to try and identify those suppliers that are locally based and to see how we can actually encourage them to be part of the next round of this framework. So I think that's probably what we need to look at. And so maybe when officers do the next round, we might just probably give some feedback to members to let you know how many local suppliers have been able to be attracted to the framework. And
what work's been going to try and do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we make a note of that in the minutes that that is an issue we've raised for the next time it's come back? I mean, I'm trying to avoid setting people writing additional reports at this stage. Which is,
I mean, just to check.
Yeah, sorry.
Jenny, when is the next round of this framework? When are we opening it up again? Just so that we know what work we need to do with economic development team to help us, because I think it's important to do that work. I mean, we're working with them in other areas anyway, trying to see where the local businesses in Hackney, what they actually supply. So if we can do that piece of work with them, leading to the opening of the framework for the next round, so that we can then be able to attract those locally based suppliers into the framework. So do we know when the framework will be opened up again?
Yeah, we've said we'll reopen again within the next 12 months, so in a year's time.
That's good. So shall we do that? Maybe it might be helpful to have someone from economic development here at the same time to talk about the work that they're doing. Yeah. So can we just put that down? Okay. Anything else? I think we've been pretty full this one. Before we move on, I've got to say thank you very much, by the way, because while we've been challenging, obviously, on important parts of the strategic procurement investment plan, yeah, we do recognise this is a big improvement on what we've had before, in terms of moving on from spot purchasing on that. So thank you very much for all the work you've all done on that, and I think it's a good thing for the borough. Given it's a huge potential amount of expenditure, isn't it? So yeah. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
So if we could then turn on to the recommendations of 3.1 and 3.2, which is basically to approve the open framework contract, recognising we looked at the business case, I think, some months ago, didn't we? So can we agree those recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. So, and thank you all very much.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
you're welcome. Yeah, okay, then. So we can now move on to item 9, which is the authority to join the management of the adaptation, repair, and maintenance improvement dynamic purchasing system. And I think, is it Rabia Khatun going to introduce this?
Yes, that's me.
Welcome, by the way. Welcome to Cpic.
Good afternoon, everyone. So if I first introduce myself. So my name's Rabia, as you mentioned, and I am a project manager with the Adult Social Care Transformation team. So I'm aware that you guys have already read the report, so I will start with a brief summary and just kind of zone in on the main points of the form, of the report, shall I say. But firstly, I thought it'd be quite good for me to give a brief history of the DFG service, DFG meaning the Disabled Facilities Grant. So from what the report has said, you guys will know that currently the DFG delivery is currently being delivered by an outsourced service, a home improvement agency, and is jointly working with a service, a DFG service within Hackney, who were part of housing services. Now, what we understand is that when this project came to, is that the outsourced service contract was due to come to an end in the next few years. At the time when the project started in 23, it was the contract is going to end in 25. So we use this as an opportunity to actually start reviewing how we want to deliver the DFG service within Hackney. And we also took this opportunity to look at insourcing the DFG delivery service. So that's one of the key themes that we wanted to point out to the group today. But we also wanted to take this opportunity to actually re-site our DFG delivery service from housing into adult social care. So we can then start working more jointly with our occupational therapy colleagues to have better communication and just to overall deliver a better service for our residents. So there were many kind of themes coming across in why we kind of looked at delivering this project. Now, to focus on the options within the actual report itself, I will kind of zone in on two of the options because I know you guys have read the report itself. So the first one is the council's adaptation framework. So this is a framework that I looked at and spoke in depth with our colleagues from the council's adaptations team to explore if this was an option that we wanted to consider as part of our insourcing service. And what to bear in mind is that when the council framework was set up, it was set up at a time when it was primarily focused on properties that were owned by the council. So it kind of very much took on a landlord perspective. So also it was never set up to actually take on DFG work. So we were mindful about the capacity that framework could actually absorb. The other option that we obviously looked at, and the one we're kind of putting across today, is the dynamic purchasing system, the DPS. Now, what you would have read within that option is that we took the opportunity to do a DPS trial to actually see if that is an option that would actually work for us. Now, it was a small sample that we used, but what we found was that the system that it used actually allowed for a lot more efficiencies and savings as well in the delivery of its adaptations. What we also found was that the DPS is actually used by other inner London local authorities and has worked quite successfully with them. And you all know that with properties within the London area, they're quite complex. Adaptation needs can be quite complex as well. So we were quite confident that they will be able to deliver on those complexities when actually delivering adaptation under the DFG. Now, what also was identified from that is that we found opportunities as well as part of creating our new team to create roles where we could deliver on a certain phase of the project called the schedule of works, where we can actually provide a little bit more flexibility in what we want from the DPS. So we can actually include social added value items, like we can request, for example, our contractors use electric vehicles. We can possibly encourage things like recycling. We can look at engaging in more local businesses. So there's a lot more flexibility in this option. And we just kind of wanted to kind of stress that here today, and it's part of our kind of one of our reasonings as to why we would want to put this forward as a proposed option for the new DFG team moving forward.
Okay.
It's finished.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from members?
Sorry, yeah.
No, don't apologise. Councillor Young.
So again, just to look at this insourcing question, down at, now I've just lost the paragraph. Okay. So at 7.1, we've said the DPS supports the insourcing of the HIA service into adult social care starting 1st of April 2025. So can you tell us a bit more about that, the insourcing, how insourcing fits into this set of proposals?
Certainly. So the insourcing element that started in April was really to bring our colleagues from the DFG service from housing into adult social care. So that element has been completed, and they are now working under the adult social care structure and working very closely with our OT colleagues. The element around the insourcing when it comes to our external provider, our external HIA, should I say, because their contract ends at the end of this month. What we are looking at is Cpic to see which kind of staff we want to bring over, and that will form again from a wider point of view, developing a broader set of skills for our insourcing DFG team. I'm hoping that's kind of answered your question.
I'm sort of, well, what's the timeline then for that? When will they be insourced?
We are in the process of the consultation. So we are in talks with our HR. And so there is I believe it's a 30-day consultation. So we do want to, so it's in progress at the moment. So we do want to roughly around about, I would say, end of September, beginning of October, where the consultation period would end.
And so how many people are we talking about bringing over?
We're talking about, I believe it's four people.
Okay. Okay. Just more.
Yeah, I too was wondering, just trying to work out what exactly the insourcing element of this was, which was not, I don't know, it's completely clear from the report.
So I think
Sorry.
it's not that it's the home improvement agency function that is being insourced from October.
Yeah.
So this report, the DEPS that we're proposing to join will facilitate the work of the newly insourced officers. So it's out, there's no insourcing happening as part of this contract award, but it is required to support the insourcing of the service.
So what happened in May? Sorry, April, whenever, sorry, I haven't got the
We agreed to move them over. We agreed to move them over from housing into.
That's within the council, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my next question was,
Okay.
unless we want to ask more.
No, we can follow up just with the details of the numbers afterwards. But thank you.
So sort of similar set of questions really to the last item. When we're looking at the social value and also the sustainability elements, how are we able to really measure that, whether they're delivering on those? So it's great to see, you know, we're expecting a certain proportion, percentage score under those headings, but how are we going to be sure they're delivering on them? And how will that feed back in each time we're calling on a.
Would it be okay if I draw my my procurement colleagues to answer that question?
Of course.
Yeah. So, Jade or Pat?
Can I tell you what the background to my worry is? When I've sat as the sort of sustainability person scoring, you know, I go through and I kind of score, well, yeah, that looks good on paper, and they say they've got, you know, ISO 14001 and blah, blah, that's all fine. But what I don't know when I'm doing that scoring is actually, are we going to see any of this, or is it just a nice thing that they put in their application? Because it's hard, once you're contract managing it, it's hard to, you're really going to be focusing on quality of the service and the cost. You're less likely to be focusing on really on, you know, the delivery of their electric vehicles or the other points that you made at that stage. And those bits of the contract management, I think, are quite difficult to do unless you've got a really committed focus on them.
Thanks, Councillor Young. Can I jump in here, Rabia, and just say that so each call off from this framework will have its own kind of schedule of works. So this will be a requirement within that to kind of have a bespoke element of sustainability or social value within those kind of call-off processes, if you will. And they're going to be monitored by, Rabia, correct me if I'm wrong again, they're going to be monitored by our in-house team.
Yes,
so they will be, go on, Rabia.
So that will be, the team will have overarching kind of monitoring, but we will have regular contracts meetings with, if the DPS is awarded. So we will have regular kind of monitoring and questioning, and we will, as mentioned before, that with the scheduler rates, we can actually specify what we would want from the contractors. And obviously, if they can't meet that, then we can have that conversation about what can they meet, why can't they meet it. But at this point in time, we don't actually have the data because this will be quite new for us. So once we, in a year's time, once we have at least a year's worth of data, we can actually review those and see how they met them.
And so you've got this new accreditation policy we're working on with Plymouth City Council, with the sustainability accreditation standard being set up. How does that come back? How do we come back and sort of see whether we're happy with the standard? Do we like the standard? Is it good enough? Does it meet our own requirements? And then how are we actually measuring against it? Is that all part of that same answer you've just given?
Yes, but also the DPS has also their own set of KPIs, which they kind of measure against the contractors that come in, and that is quite uniform across other local authorities who also tapped into this DPS. And that way they can measure that and also have that conversation within our own contracts meeting to see how they've delivered that and if it meets our standards as well.
Thank you. And I think at some point I would really like to see, and I'm not suggesting it has to come back to Cpic, but I would really like at some point to see what that SAS is, what it looks like, what the standard is, and then also to be able to see to what extent we're calling off contracts that meet it. Thank you.
Can perhaps, if I address that question, just to the head of procurement, and maybe how we, not necessarily as a committee, but how we as a council follow up on things like this.
Are you saying
on the issues that Councillor Young was referring to,
sustainability accreditation,
things like that, how we might usefully follow up on that.
I think so. The work will be something that we do with the procurement team. So the procurement hub. So I think what will be useful is, as you're getting that information through from your contractors, to liaise with the procurement hub to be able to capture the information as part of the annual reporting. So as you know, Councillor Chapman, there is the plan to do an annual reporting of how well we're performing around the sustainable procurement objectives. So the plan will be to include that in that narrative that will bring back to the committee.
Yeah, okay, so that's very helpful. I'm conscious that an issue in the past has been collecting data to enable to populate that report, and obviously as we go forward with new contracts and new arrangements, we want to make sure that we can in future, don't we?
Yeah. So one of the things we are doing, again, as you're aware, Chair, is that we're implementing the contract management system, and I think as my colleague Jade,
it was referred to in the introduction.
Jade was mentioning about the fact that the plan will be to use that system for managing this contract going forward. So we'll be able to capture real life the performance of the suppliers against some of these KPIs that we're talking about. So instead of going back to our people on an annual basis, we expect to have those information already on the system for us to just extract and present to members.
Great. Okay, are there any other questions or comments?
Thank you for that.
As always, thank you for we obviously, as I said, in relation to the last report, we're always going to quiz on the issues of sustainable procurement, but thank you for the immense amount of work that's been put into doing this, which is a great piece of work, and help a lot of disadvantaged people in the borough. So if we can move to recommendations, 3.1 and 3.2 again, which is to approve to join the ARMI DPS, basically, isn't it? And associated. Can we do that?
Yep.
Excellent. So, right, I need to move that down to now. Yeah. So at this point, because I think the following items are going to be exempt, I'm going to move that we exclude the press to the public for the meeting. Right. So I've got to read this out. So if you can ask that the press and public be excluded from the proceedings of the Cabinet Procurement and Insourcing Committee during consideration of the exempt items 10 to 15 on the grounds that it's likely, in the view of the nature of the business to be transacted, that were members of the public to be present, there would be disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972 as amended. So can we agree with that?
Agreed.
So, Rabia, could you make necessary arrangements for the streaming?
And what could we stop live streaming, please?
I don't know when that's done.